everybody to this audio commentary on Justice League 24. This exercise experiment we're going to do with Ram.
Hello.
Talking about the creative process behind Justice League issue 24. Obviously, that's Ram B, the writer of this issue, and Amancay Nahuelpan is me, the artist.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Ram.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you, Amancay, for setting this up. Because while I love doing this, I have like zero ability to actually set stuff up and get it going. So
yeah, I'm experimenting as well. So hopefully this ends up something interesting for people to listen to or to watch.
Well, you're definitely motivated. I'll give you that.
Okay, so basically the idea behind this is, as I was just talking with Ram, is to let people, to introduce people into our creative process on how we come up with each of these issues. We're going to start obviously with issue 24, which was our first official team up with Ram, because we collaborated a little bit before in issue 22, but it was just like a very small fragment. But now with issue 24, we're like full on working together, talking the scripts together and layouts and all that stuff. So we'll probably go like through some pages that are like essential in the issue and see what happens from there. So, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about the issue. So if you haven't read issue 24 of Justice League Dark, I'd recommend you pause this video and come back after reading it, because obviously there's going to be spoilers and we're going to be talking about how we came up with the images and ideas in this book. So for starters, as I said before, this is the first time we collaborated officially together. And one of the things that was like funny at the beginning was when you first saw the layouts that I sent you.
Yeah.
I remember you saying like, what the hell?
No, to be fair, I didn't just start with what the hell, Amancay. No, to be fair, there's always that thing, right, where you have varying degrees of detail in layouts with artists. Like I work with Fernando Blanco on the Catwoman stuff, and his layouts are just like, they're like 80% there when he sends them his layouts, and you're like, oh, you just need to add like a few details, and these are just finished pages, aren't they? And then obviously working on some of the other creator-owned stuff. Yeah, I understand artists have different levels of detail in their layouts. I think yours might be one of those with like the least amount of detail that I've seen, but I also now have a better idea of how much development happens between your layout and your finished page. So looking at your layouts now, like in my brain, I know, oh, I don't need to bother about telling him this because he'll figure it out in the final page. So I guess in a way, your layouts are useful because they get us to focus in on the things that we do need to focus on, because they don't have the extraneous detail that I am now confident that, oh yeah, I mean, Amancay will handle this when it comes to the final page.
Yeah, so just so people can have like an idea of what Ram is talking about. My layouts are super rough. Sometimes it's even just like two talking circles, and that's it. The reason why this happens is because I always try to focus on the script and layouts right away. Like I don't like to spend too much time delaying the layout process, because I want to have it right away so I can have like the flow of the story right away. So usually those layouts focus more on the storytelling kind of ish, like where the cameras are going to be, where the people are going to be spotted, and then during the pencil slash inking process is when I go with like all the details, and I even change like you notice sometimes I even change my own layouts to the final image, because when I'm in the creative process is when I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
this should be
you
like
realize you're
this,
making
yeah.
different choices. Yeah.
But the good thing is that at least now, or even then, we would still be able to like go back and forth with ideas. Like you would suggest maybe this should be this way, or the editors would be like, we should move this camera here,
Yeah.
and that then gives me like the full scope of how that finished pages will end up looking like.
Yeah, I think sometimes when I look at the layouts, the thing that I'm trying to, if I come back to you and go, hey, I think we should do something different here, is usually when I feel like the emotional content or the story content of the page is trying to do something in my head that I haven't been able to transmit to you, or is not being reflected in the layout. So I come back to you and I go, hey, this is what I'm trying to do because this is what I need it to feel like. And then I think that's a good way of going about it, because you're focusing so much on the storytelling. Like that bit becomes quite clear quite early on, and so we can address those issues quite early on from your layouts, which is quite good.
Yeah. So after that surprise of my layouts, you got page 1, which was like a relief, because you were like, oh, this guy actually can draw.
No, I mean, I knew you could draw because, like, I think I told you, I had one of your early Black Mass Studios books, so I knew you could draw. No, it was the I guess for people who don't quite remember the first page, it's that image with Zatara burning and the
one that it has been previewed, so people can see it online.
Yeah, and it's such a gorgeous image, and so and I also know you could definitely draw that because we had a reference image that we were trying to like pay homage to as well. So I wasn't as much concerned about that. It was definitely just the sense of shock to go from like, oh, there's just 3 lines, a circle and a stick to show this figure here, to like, oh, that's the amount of detail that's on the final page. That's amazing.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about that page, because a lot of people online noticed the direct reference to the Books of Magic.
Yeah.
Was that something that you came up? You talked to the editors about it? How did this idea? Are you a Books of Magic fan or something? Like, how did that come up?
I mean, I've read Books of Magic. I think it's a very good series. I'm generally a fan of Neil Gaiman's work in comics, but also, more importantly, I kind of wanted to center or sort of ground this issue because it was kind of the jumping off point for all the issues that are to come, right? So I wanted to establish, okay, what's the emotional conflict here? Because I mean, I think all the issues that led up to here have been so like bombastic, and there's like big events happening and magic, and the world is going to explode. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget why we're here, why these characters are risking their lives to solve all these world-ending problems. And so I wanted to do an issue that kind of said, okay, let's go quiet for 5 minutes and just look at why we are here. And so I suppose that first page kind of begins to answer the question of why we are here. And I think Zatanna is a very important kind of focal point of the team and the arc that we're writing. So I wanted to start with, okay, why is Zatanna here? That was my next question. The next question led from there to, she's here because of what happened to her father. And this has been like a big important part of her character in many stories. So I said, okay, let's push a little bit more. Let's show what actually has happened to her father. And I thought that was a nice way of doing it without going, this is what happened to Zatara. Is to get people to go, oh, wait, he was like this in Books of Magic, and now look at him, he's like this. And I think that in itself presents a really nice opening image. I believe in strong opening images for issues. And when I say strong, I mean, yes, obviously visually beautiful, but I don't have to worry about that. You do. I mean strong in a way that it really sets a tone for the story. And I think that first page, the image, the words kind of really set the tone to establish the emotional through line in the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that definitely, like when I got that script and I saw that first page, it was like, well, this is quite a way to start this run. Like Sitara just burning in flames there, and the rabbits and all these animals surrounding him. And I think people actually really enjoyed that first image. I remember at the beginning you also suggested that the text would be like floating instead of like in caption boxes, but because of all the firelight and all that, we ended up changing. I mean, Rob ended up changing that to the caption boxes, which works perfect. Like it's
yeah. No, I think, I think what I'd suggested was the floating text, but as soon as we saw the amount of color detail and the little, embers of fire flying about, like I knew it would be difficult for readers to read the text if it was set on top of all that. So I think having the caption boxes there was definitely the best way to go.
Yeah, and June's colors were like fantastic in the final version as well. Like, I think I haven't uploaded yet my inks, but probably do that. But June's colors are just great. And then we jumped to the big opening, the double page spread. And I was like really excited at first because I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna draw all the characters, and then like half of them are dead. Or they seem dead.
I think it's a very classic screenwriter's trick to create, or to at least have tension in an issue where really we're kind of taking a step back and looking at the characters, right? If I'd not done this double page spread, it'd just be like, okay, so we're looking at a bunch of people sitting around talking about their emotions and where they are in life. So what? But if you have this spread, it tells you that, oh wait, we're gonna end up here at some point. And so this is always in the back of the reader's mind, because then everything else that happens, the reader's reading with this context. Oh my God, this is gonna happen. So when Detective Chimp is talking to Wonder Woman about, you got to take a chance, the reader's going, oh my God, but if you take that chance, this is going to happen. And so I think it's a very useful structural thing to do. I remember one of the writers that I talked to early on said, this is a technique called looking back from a doom, where that there is a doom that has come. And you're looking back from it and telling the story of how you got there, which lets you do a lot of interesting things with the story, because you've established tension by saying everything's going to go terribly bad.
Well, it's like I remember Breaking Bad did that a lot. Like the beginning of each episode, they would start with like a teddy bear on a swimming pool, and you had no idea what that teddy bear was doing there. And then at the end, you're like, wow, this is how we got there. So in this issue, we still haven't seen what's going to happen. But I mean, if readers are already focused on this image, obviously there's going to be a confrontation with Upside Down Man, and it's like, can't wait to get to that point.
Exactly.
This was a really fun page also to draw, because it was like my first kind of like encounter with the Upside Down world kind of thing. And
I remember we had a discussion about that as well. I was just like, just go crazy with it. Throw weird architectural elements here and there. Do whatever you want. Because really, I think it encompasses that quite well. Yeah.
And as an artist, when you read those scripts, it's like, on one side it's like, cool, I can go crazy, but then it's like, how crazy does he want me to go? Like, will I meet those expectations kind of thing? It's like, then you're like, it's like, what should I do here? Like a triangle moon and all these things floating around. So I obviously took a lot of inspiration from Alvaro, because what he did previously was just like amazing. So
yeah,
there was like that from like reference point to get the ideas of what the setting looks like and all that.
yeah. And I think Alvaro is really good at that as well. Is he really takes, like, he can do characters talking and moving around and walking around on all the normal pages, but when he gets to like the big moments, like he knows to just cut loose and go crazy and go really big with it. And I think that's a useful technique to this book, which I think you've also noticed is, we need to have those like pages of just big moments every once in a while.
Yeah, no, and it definitely like especially like this issue, because it's like, as you said, this kind of like let's take a moment kind of issue. There's a lot of like acting and quiet moments that I really enjoy like drawing, because it's a fun challenge to kind of like channel those emotions into the pages.
Yeah, and you're staggeringly good at that. Like, I know you don't see this sometimes, but I always, when I send notes to editors, I'm always like, oh man, he's so good at figuring out the acting and the right expressions and the right emotions. And I think you see that with reader reaction as well. I mean, usually the kind of reader reaction I would expect from this is to go like, oh man, not much happened. But we had so many people come in and go like, it's really nice to see the characters kind of interact and figure out where they are. And I think, I mean, the words aside, but I think a lot of that is because you bring so much personality and acting to each of the panels and each of the characters.
Yeah, that's, I mean, when you have these quiet moments, that's when you have to really stretch that muscle to actually make these characters act and make you care about them, because at the end, if it's like just two people standing there, it really doesn't connect much with readers.
And I think it becomes very easy to forget that, especially when you're doing superhero comics, because you have all these big moments and characters punching each other and splitting worlds open with magic, blah blah blah. But it's really easy to forget that people read stories because they care about characters. They don't read stories because there's, big stuff happening or worlds being blown apart. Like, no one would be watching Dragon Ball Z for the big fights if they didn't care about Goku and all the characters that are established in that series. So I think that's a useful thing to remember especially when you're writing like action heavy or kind of big moment heavy comics.
Yeah, and especially when you have these characters, like we're flipping now to the next page where Wonder Woman starts talking to Detective Chimp and all that, and he channels through this issue all that kind of like emotion of like connecting with each character kind of, which is also something, again, you get to play around, especially Detective Chimp, because he's a chimp, it gives you like this kind of kind of like cartoonish freedom to play a little bit more with his expressions or the way he looks like, compared to just like a human face. And we have them at the top of this building, which initially in the layouts I had more buildings and a smaller Wonder Woman, and you guys were like, let's cut the buildings and make a bigger Wonder Woman. I was like, I just want to draw buildings.
I think it was important to have the character kind of front and center for that, because we really need a sense of like that kind of, I'm looking into the distance because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where we're going. And so I think that sense of existential quandary needed to come in. And I think we hit the right balance of characters versus buildings in that page.
I'm obviously Wonder Woman is much important in this book than the buildings. And then after that, we're at the bar with Zatanna, and this is where we pretty much start focusing into kind of like the present of this issue kind of thing. Here's where things start rolling. Chimp is he's meeting with Zatanna. He gives her the box and all that. They fight the monster. She gets a drink and walks away. And all these kind of like moments. There's no dialogue. It's just like Chimp telling us the story. And again, this was another fun challenge because we're mixing action and then some emotional moments with Zatanna interacting with Chimp, and then her going to the theater. Here we had another I remember we added an extra panel on this page to show a little bit more of Zatanna throwing her powers and all that.
Yeah.
And then from there we're at the murder wall.
Yeah, so I think that whole sequence does this kind of interesting, important thing because it's kind of a handing over of narrative from, well, if you imagine it starts with Wonder Woman, even though it's Detective Chimp talking throughout everything, the narrative visually starts with Wonder Woman, then it gets handed over to her and Detective Chimp, then it gets handed over to Zatanna. So it's almost like Detective Chimp is kind of this orchestra conductor going, now's your moment, now's your moment, now's your moment. And so it becomes interesting to kind of work that into the scene without readers being able to recognize that, oh, that's what he's doing. And so that's why we had to have the interaction in the bar, is we needed to kind of ease ourselves into the narrative going from Wonder Woman to Zatanna. And then it hits that sort of emotional note when we get to the murder wall and we realize, why is she obsessed? Why is she doing this? Which is looking for a father.
Yeah, so here on the murder wall is where we actually see all her notes and stuff like that, and we can also get a sense of her obsession with Upside Down Man and how she wants to get there and rescue Zatara and find a way to defeat this monster. And she tries to, but she just can't. She doesn't have the powers yet. It's funny because, and I don't remember if in the script you mentioned to have her like the word balloons like if she was like drunk or something like that. I don't know.
No. Originally it was captions, and then when the first lettering pass came through, it was Andrea, the editor, who said this would actually read really well if she was just drunk and talking to herself.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, that is absolutely true. So we just changed a little bit of the dialogue, caption stuff to dialogue, but we changed it so it looks like she's actually drunk and talking to herself rather than.
Yeah, I remember when I got the first pass of the lettering and I saw, I mean, when I saw the lettering with these word balloons, it was like, oh, that actually looks really, really good. Like that never came to my head until I saw it, and it was like, that totally makes sense. Like she's been like drinking that whole bottle of whiskey on her own.
Yeah,
she
exactly.
should have some kind of like.
And she's so like, I love the fact that without having to overtly show it, you can hear the bitterness in her words. Where she's like, oh, is she gonna open this door or is she gonna fail again? I guess we'll see.
Yeah. And also here's a reference to that first page, the Books of Magic one, with the poster of Zatara, but him actually from that original page. I guess no one noticed that, but it's a little Easter egg there. And then, well, she's conjuring some kind of spell or something to get to her dad, but she just can't yet. Here, I remember we had a conversation about the look of this room, because initially I had it as the murder wall was going to be in a different room from the stage, and then talking with Andrea and you, we were like, well, you guys were like, we should probably just have this on the main stage of the theater with the murder wall there, and then have the rest of the theater open so we can actually see the seats and the floor. And those are the kind of things that happen during the layout process, which is the most for me, it's the most important part because it's the most collaborative kind of process where editors, writers, and artists get to share all the different thoughts and things. Like that's when you actually see.
It's such a logistical concern as well that you might miss it if you're thinking purely creatively, right? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me if the murder wall is one room and then the stage is in a different place. But it matters in a sense that you will lose real estate showing her getting from the murder wall to the stage. Or if you don't do that, then you'll lose clarity because people will go, "Oh wait, I thought she was in front of a murder wall. What
Yeah.
happened?"
Yeah.
So those it's that kind of like detailed mechanical stuff that you deal with when you get to these layouts, and then you almost need someone else to point out, like, I think they should be in the same place. So it was actually Alex who pointed out, Alex Carr, who was also the editor of the book, pointed
Yeah.
out that I think these need to be in the same place. And I was like, does that work? Where would you have a murder wall on a stage? And I go, no, I guess there's always a backstage area, right? There's a curtain and then there's a backstage. So she's just turned the backstage area into this kind of. I also like the idea that the stage is her staging area, if you will. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, and after we go through all that, it actually it obviously makes sense. It's like, why didn't I think about that before? Because obviously you didn't have this conversation with the rest of the people, which is why, like I've always said, like working at DC, I've had, well, I guess you too, we've had the luck to work with amazing editors that are like not just the guys keeping everything under control, but it's like all this whole creative process that comes together and all the suggestions and when we go this way or this way and why don't you shift the camera this way to get a better look of that or whatever, and those things are the ones that end up contributing to the storytelling of the whole kind of part of it.
Yeah, like I said,
which is,
I think when you are a creator, you're quite close to the work. And so because, at least with me, I have a version of the story already in my head when I'm scripting. The danger of that is some part of the story gets stuck in your head but doesn't make
yeah.
it onto the paper. So you just assume that, oh yeah, of course that readers are going to know that. But they're not going to know that if it's just in your head and if it's not on the page. And I think that's where a good editor is really useful, and really plays like a collaborative role in the comic, because they're going, I see what you're doing, I see what's in your head, and I know what's on paper. I think there's this connective tissue needed to make it clear or to make it work better. And so, yeah, I think it's incredibly useful to, especially in a collaborative medium, to have that kind of distance point of view, third person point of view, who doesn't know what's in your head and so is only judging what's on the paper.
Yeah, same with art. Like when you're working on a page, it's really hard sometimes to like take a look of it like from an outsider kind of point of view, and look for all the things that might be missing or something that probably should be a different way or whatever. So that's when like you or the editors point out something, and even in the final pages, sometimes there's changes that have to be made.
Yeah.
But,
there's
but
one
yeah.
I need to email you about right now.
But yeah, so that's why it's always really important to have all this. Well, it's part of the creative process,
Yeah.
To be collaborative between writer, artist, and editors. It's key for the end result of the products.
Yeah, I remember we had this conversation starting out early on where I was like, man, I hope you don't mind if I message you and I'm like, hey, let's talk about the layout. Because when I'm writing something, I'm not going, this is my work, my great opus, and no one gets to tell me how to do it. I think a book is always better when you treat it like a band playing a song, right? Everybody's got to be on the same page. Everybody's got to get everybody else's energy, and then when you're making music together, you end up with a good song. It's not like you end up with a good song if the singer does his job and the guitarist does his job and the bassist does. You all have to play for each other, if you will. And so my approach to comics, even when I'm working on, whether I'm working on creator-owned stuff or whether I'm working on stuff at DC, Marvel, is always to go, hey, let's get on the same page and make a good book. I don't care if you come to me and say, I need something else to happen on this page because it's not very exciting, then I will try and make something else happen. In the same way, I'm not shy about picking up Twitter and going, hey, Amancay, let's talk about these layouts.
Yeah, no, and that's good. That's good because it as you said, like it's a collaborative process kind of thing. And usually, like when you send pages and you don't get any feedback, either good or bad, it's like you're still wondering if you're doing it right or not because you're like okay, but tell me something. Like what is wrong here?
I mean, even like I'd probably get annoyed even if people just came and said, yeah, that was good. I'm like, no, don't give me that was good stuff. Let's talk about story. What did you like? What did you not like? What can I change? How could it have been better? And I don't necessarily look for that from readers, but I would certainly expect that from collaborators and editors.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then we're at the lab with Kirk and Bobo. I gotta say this first panel, that was a little inset that wasn't in the script, right? Remember?
Yeah. Sorry.
I added it because I just wanted to draw all of justice from the outside. I was like, I'm not gonna miss my opportunity here. I'm gonna put this there. And luckily that was, well, here's another, like what you were just talking about, like that wasn't in the script and I suggested that in the layouts.
Yeah, and I think it's visually important to have that marker of like, look, we're changing locations now and we're going here. And so I think it's a very important call, and I think it's rightly a call that you should make because you're the one. I mean, technically, I'm telling you the story and then you're telling it to the readers. So it's kind of like playing Chinese whispers, and you definitely have to go with what you feel is needed to tell the story to the reader rather than me telling you, oh, I think you need to draw this building here, or you don't need to draw this building here. So
yeah, and this was a really fun page because it gave me a lot of room to play with the emotions of Kirk being super happy about discovering what he discovered here with Swamp Thing and all that. So yeah, it was like again, these characters that have more like a cartoonish kind of thing where you can actually play with their eyes and
so this is the page I looked at and I went, I should definitely write more Kirk and Bobo scenes for Amancay because he's so good at that kind of in-between place between to use cartooning but to transmit like a really nice emotional page.
Yeah, Kirk was super happy in this page. And then we go to Swamp Thing, which was another page that I was like really excited. When I read the script, I was like, I want to get to this page as soon as possible because I just wanted to draw Swamp Thing. And in the script, well, you gave me the different suggestions of how the roots were like coming from the ground and forming the layout of this page. And then each panel will be in between these different roots. So that was pretty straightforward there. And then it was just a matter of trying to make him look as cool as possible. I remember I redrew his face a bunch of times because I wasn't getting that right feel of something, but eventually I ended up getting one that I was like more comfortable with.
So I remember this originally. It was going to be a double page spread. When I was scripting. And like when I was scripting, it was going to be a double page spread, and we're going to have Swamp Thing kind of in the middle, and the roots all going like there were going to be trees in the background, so you'd have had vertical panels in between the trees, if you will. And eventually, when I got to the end of the script, I was like, no, I'm going to need another page somewhere. And so I went, and my first reaction is to go, okay, can I skip a double page spread and make it a splash and work that way instead. And yeah, that's what I have to do with this one.
And it works perfect because even with the layout here, I mean, with the way the design of the page is, like it works perfect with
I know it does
how it is there. Like you don't need any more information.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to say that here are these like weird decisions that you have to, like, I always script. I get to the end of script every time. I'm like, man, I need 2 more pages. And
Yeah.
so the worst part, the part that I really hate about scripting is writing 22 pages for a 20-page issue and then having to go back and like, it's like
Crunching
it's
everything.
like working with the worst jigsaw puzzle to go, okay, maybe I can combine these 3 panels into just one and do it this way. And so there's like a lot of mechanical decisions that start going into, oh, I've got 3 characters talking. Can they all talk in the same panel rather than 3? Like I had to do that with a Catwoman issue recently, where again, I went from a double-page spread to a single page splash. Then I hated the fact that I had to do that, so I went back to a double page, added a couple of panels onto the right-hand end of the double page, and so that made enough room on the next page for me to take a few panels for the page after that, and then the rest of those panels I pushed into the page after that. So I ended up with an empty page in between, and I just removed that and added that to the end. And it's like, okay, it works. So it's this kind of
It's
weird, it's not really writing because you've written the comic. It's
yeah.
kind of writing and then going, okay, can I hammer this piece to fit into this?
It's
Can I
it's
hammer
well,
this?
it's the editing process of it. Like
Yeah.
I imagine what it must be for movie makers, like directors and editors. Be like, let's cut this piece here, let's cut
Yeah,
this piece
exactly.
there, whatever.
Exactly.
And something similar happens when you're doing the layouts on the pages. Like you're like, I want to focus on this, but then you're like, oh, but I don't have enough space for this panel here, so I'm gonna have to shrink that panel and make this one bigger so we can actually see what's happening.
Yeah.
For the most part of the script, you usually tell me this is the big one, and then
Yeah.
focus on the rest. But sometimes when it's just like whatever you want kind of thing, I have to like play around with who am I gonna focus on with and all that stuff. So again, you have like this nice drawing, and then at the end you're like, I have no space for this. I have to go back and do all these.
The worst part is when you have like a really good drawing, and then you have a small panel, and then I look at the script and I go, I'm gonna need more room for dialogue on that panel, because I hate having to sacrifice room on like a really beautiful visual just so I can write more dialogue in there. So usually I try to just cut my dialogue back in those places, but sometimes it happens and I'm like, I can't cut this, I need this. So then it's always like you're right, it's an interesting puzzle piece to work with.
It's part of the
visually
process.
and narratively.
And then we're back with Khalid and Kent back in the Hall of Justice, and
this was my
Bobo's
favorite scene to write of the whole.
This was a
book.
really nice scene. Like again, this was like just playing with the characters, all the acting and all that stuff, and it gave me like the space to like one of the things that I like of these 2 pages, if you put them together, is that we start with a really open view, like inside of the Hall of Justice, like Bobo walking to the door, and then we end up like we go through all this conversation, and we end up on the focus on this reflection on the helmet.
Yeah.
So it gives us like this wide opening, and then little by little we start closing in.
Yeah.
And it translates a little bit to what these 2 pages are. Like it's this conversation of the 2 of them, and it's this really kind of like candid kind of conversation between Kent and Khaled, and then we end up with this hug and the reflection and all that. Which I don't remember.
I read James's issues previous to this, and I felt like he had started some of this, but never quite addressed it. In that he had started the process of Khaled kind of taking on more responsibility. When Kent is taken over by the Lords of by Naboo, it's Khaled who kind of plays a pivotal role. So I felt like Khaled's always been taking on more responsibility as these issues went forward, and I also felt like it was important to have this character who is clearly like a new point of view for a Dr. Fate. And I said, well, let's just go. Let's make him Dr. Fate. And so that's how I got the idea for this scene in my head, where I was like, okay, this is the this is the scene where Kent says, "It's yours, kid. Go be all that you are supposed to be," you know. But he also does that with a little bit of a warning where he says, "Don't, don't become a prisoner of the helm. Still be human. Still remember what it's like to be human."
Yeah. No, it's a really nice conversation, and well, I remember you in the script you were like, let's have this big window with the stars and the buildings and all that in the background. And I remember, I think originally that last panel was the helmets in the foreground and them in the background, but I think
the original idea was to have the helm kind of floating on the side of the panel, and then past the helm you see the two of them as they share a hug. But then you did this thing where you had the reflection on the helm, and the first time I looked at it, I was just like, that's cool. That's very smart. That's really cool.
That was, yeah. Those are those happy accidents that I call them. That it's like I had already like drawn the main idea at first.
Yeah.
And then it was like, this looks a little bit like stiff, like too stiff. What if we change this around? And then it was like, oh, why don't you just go with the reflection on it? And I really like the way it ended up looking, like with the colors.
Yeah,
and all that.
even June's coloring on that, the way she makes the helm really feel like it's glittering almost.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, this was a really fun 2-page to draw, and the way that ended up like this kind of like walk through that we have between both of them from the beginning to the end. It looks really nice on the page. I mean, we're not gonna throw ourselves all the flowers and all that, but I mean, the total thing looks really nice.
It's just nice when like you write a thing, and the best part is when a reader reads it and they talk about it and they're like, oh, I really like this bit, and I was like, yes, it worked as it was intended to work, which is always the best feeling as a writer, because I think the fundamental purpose of writing fiction is to convey or evoke emotion, right? And when people say, I really like this scene, and you wrote that scene to evoke a certain emotion, and it just fits, you're like, I was successful at my job. Well done.
Yeah. And then we're back with Wonder Woman and Bobo kind of like ending the conversation and convincing her to actually join the group back, kind of. This was another of those fun moments to draw, because again, there's like buildings and close-ups, so it's like my jam.
I gotta say that those 3 panels in the middle are probably just narratively probably my favorite 3 panels. Like, it's that moment that you've been building to in the issue where you're like, oh, Detective Chimp's this kind of cute cartoony character that goes around talking about all the characters, but I don't know why he's important. I don't know why he's here. And that last line that he tells, not that I claim to have answers, but I figure at some point it probably gets harder to live with the choices that you didn't make. Like, it's such a heavy line. Like, you'd expect some kind of old crinkled cowboy sat at a bar to tell you that line on a night when you're drinking hard whiskeys because the day has not gone well. So it's that kind of heavy line that he says. I remember someone on Twitter recently asked me, like, what's the cadence? What's the voice you hear in your head when you're writing Detective Chimp? And immediately I was reminded of that scene from Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart going like, here's looking at you, kid. So like, that's how I hear Detective Chimp in my head. So if you think about these words with that voice, I was like, yes. And then when I saw the panel with the little cigarette in the hand and the smoke drifting out of the mouth, I was like, perfect. That was amazing.
Yeah, I like that Chimp has that kind of like noirish kind of like add to it. Yeah. And then we're back in the theater with Zatanna really upset. Again, like as you know already, I'm a fan of drawing buildings, so I added a little corner building there with the outsider. And
I also love that in these pages, it's just a repetition that shows her frustration.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen her do this before in the same issue, and the fact that she's just doing it again is kind of conveys her repetition without us having to spell it out. I quite like that.
Yeah, and then there's Wonder Woman with Chimp, and they plan to go back into the Upside Down world. These pages were also really fun to draw because like the background of the theater and all that, and the interaction with Wonder Woman and Chimp and Zatanna. Like the thing of Wonder Woman is every time you I guess when you write her, but also when you're drawing her, she's this figure that imposes like respect and love and that kind of stuff, that it's like right away, like when she's on the scene, it's like, oh, there's Wonder Woman, we know her deal.
Yeah, she dominates the scene. Yeah, absolutely.
She's such a
I love
character from that point.
I love the way you draw her in this scene as well, with kind of Zatanna's posture being a little bit more unsure, but when Wonder Woman's standing, she's always sure of how she's standing. Like there's that kind of solidity in her posture. And it's the same thing where, like, even when they hug, she's like lending support to Zatanna, who's hugging her, which is quite nice.
It's like I feel like Wonder Woman is the one that's always going to be giving you the support no matter what's going on with her, but she's that strong enough to help you when you're in danger or in trouble or going through a rough time or whatever. Like she kind of like has that kind of like image of greatness kind of thing. I love the line with Chimp here where he's like, just a chimp with a magic sword, lady, but you can't count on me. I mean, again, he's
just playing into that idea that he's not, I mean, he's always had this, that I'm not the most powerful hero here, but you realize in this issue, without him, they would all just fall apart. So he's kind of the glue that's holding them together in a way. But I like the fact that he undercuts his own importance with that humor where he's just like, I'm just a chimp with a sword. But the other thing that I really enjoy about that panel is actually, if you look at that last panel on that page, and then you flip to the second panel on the next page, you get this like complete transformation from, hey, I'm just a happy little chimp trying to help you, to I'm a noir detective and I know how this is going to go. I really like that kind of juxtaposition of, well, he's not as naive as you think he is.
That definitely is one of the things that I liked about these pages with him, is that he plays the cutesy kind of chimp kind of character. But then when they're gone, it's like, okay, here we go. I gotta do my detective stuff and all that.
I think there is a seriousness to him. I think from his point of view, although he doesn't appreciate the fact that everyone else, or at least he thinks in his head that everyone else thinks he's just this chimp who can't really do much.
The pet kind of thing.
But he also on the flip side knows how to use that. And so clearly here he's just used that to tell Wonder Woman that, of course I'll stay here and do whatever you ask me to do. And then 2 panels later he's like, nah, I'm not going to do any of that stuff.
And then we get that letter. I was like, yes, John Constantine is coming. I've been wanting to draw him all this issue and he doesn't show up at all.
And there's a lot of John later. It's just that weird thing, right? So as you say with Wonder Woman, when she's in a scene, she dominates it. And I think I love writing John. Like the editors have said, you do such a good job of writing John. But the editors have also said that if I write John in a team book, it eventually happens so that John's the one who kind of takes over the team. And he doesn't really lead, but he leads them without them knowing it, which is even worse because you can't stop it then, you know? So I think it was part of a discussion we had where we were like, okay, let's give all the other characters a little bit more room to breathe and bring back John when we need to. So
like John
I'm sorry you had to wait for an issue.
Yes. I was like, come on, just give it to me. But yeah, like and it's been like the way you write him, it's been just like a joy to draw him and all that. It's we'll talk about that next month, I guess. But yeah, and then we end up with Zatanna and Wonder Woman finding out that the Burning Man is showing up again, and it's her father.
Yeah. And I really like that the issue kind of ends where it started, if you will.
Yeah, like a full circle kind of thing.
Yeah, and it works. That circularity, I think, is important, especially in comics, because you're writing an ongoing story, but you're also writing just each issue to stand on its own. And so, if you think about it, this issue, our hero wanted something. They tried to get it, but they couldn't get it. And then they made attempts at getting it. Eventually they were helped and they got it, and they went to the end where they thought they would get one thing, but they've been surprised by something else. It's a standard, very standard kind of shape for a story, underlying shape for a story. And so I always talk to a lot of, writers in genre fiction. It's funny the number of people who come and say, "Oh man, I don't believe in that structure stuff." But I have quite the opposite view. I think structure is very important, and you can play with it, you can push it, you can change it, but you have to know how it works first before you can do any of that stuff. And in my opinion, a lot of new writers come in and just go like, "Oh, I don't want my creativity restrained by having to use structure. I want to be David Lynch, or I want to be Nabokov." And my response to that is, yeah, you can be those guys, but those guys started by learning structure first. I guarantee it.
Even if you have the structure, you can then deconstruct it, and there's still going to be a structure there.
But even to deconstruct, you have to know what you are deconstructing in the first place.
And the cool thing is when you have the structure, but it doesn't, you can't see that structure there because you deconstruct it and hide it so well that readers just read it without knowing that they've been following this line the whole time. Because you set the pieces there for that to happen.
I always give this as an example to a lot of people, love the first sort of Sandman volume, right? A lot of people are like, "This is what got me into comics. I want to be this kind of writer." And you read Neil Gaiman stuff, and it always feels so ephemeral, so whimsical. Like things are happening, they're all beautiful, they're all pretty. You pick up the first issue of Sandman, and he hits every script writing structural element, note for note. There's a hook in the beginning. There's a thing that his protagonist needs that it doesn't get. It's all there. It's just done with such subtlety and with such skill and deftness that it's not visible to you, which I think is important. And so I kind of like the idea that this issue was a really nice structural unit without there being any kind of dramatic action to push you through or big events. So I guess in a way, it was me saying you can write a quiet issue and still have it be tense and still have it be meaningful and still have it work if you understand how structure works.
Well, I mean, even like noir is like that. Noir is very kind of like just stories happening in a very quiet way kind of thing, but they're so powerful that it's just like, wow, it's like, because there's a structure, there's a story behind it, and like you can see that the way how structure works many times in like TV shows or TV series, when there's a structure for a couple of seasons, and then it's just like trying to stretch that idea as much as possible, and the structure is lost, and then the story just goes.
You lose the tightness of the story. So no, I think I was pretty happy with this issue, the way it worked, and I'm kind of I smile to myself. Sometimes, you get these you get reader reactions where they're like, oh, I really like the issue, but it wasn't like not much happened. It wasn't like fast paced or anything. And in my head, I'm just like, yeah, wait till you read the next 3.
Yeah. You're gonna want to push the brake at some point there.
Yeah. So I like that idea that things kind of develop and they start quietly, and then they hit a point where you're like, oh crap, all of this stuff is happening. So I prefer that kind of storytelling to just constantly at a high pace.
Yeah, and eventually readers will see how this whole arc has that beginning, and then it'll go to the point where that structure is sending them.
Yeah, and I wonder what your reaction is now that you've read the script for 28 to look at 24 and go and see how the concerns are mirrored in the same way, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm not gonna spoil anything here, but it's been like it's been fascinating to read all these scripts, and obviously your work has been amazing with all of them. But yeah, once you have all those stories all together, it'll be like fascinating to go back and see like where all the different dots were being
and I can kind of see like your familiarity with the writing and the script also reflected in your art now. Like I get pages and I go, okay, yeah, like Amancay gets where this character is now, or why this character is sad, or why this character is angry, and so I think that really works well, and I always take that as an indication that I'm doing well when my artist is getting the emotional cues without me having to point them out, which means the story is running in the back of your mind, even if you're on a different issue,
Yeah. No, and that's part of, again, going back to the beginning, to kind of like full circle thing. It's part of also the collaboration and this kind of like feedback back and forth. Like if there's something that you don't like, I kind of like have an idea of where you want to focus this. You as the writer know kind of like what I can do with the art. And obviously the editors already know what we can do together. So
the editors sometimes are like, can we give a bit more definition here? And I'm like, nope, it's okay. He can do whatever he wants with this, because I know now where your strengths are and where I should just shut up and let you do the work. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I guess we can end on that note. Hopefully people enjoyed this video. We'll see what happens with this experiment. If you like it, well, we'll probably make more. If you don't, that's it. But yeah,
it'll just be this one issue that we randomly discussed. That'd be great.
No, but hopefully we'll be back next month with more talking about Justice League Dark, and follow us on social media. Follow Ram, follow me. I'm gonna be putting the social media handles there so people can check them out. And yeah, like, subscribe, whatever, all that kind of stuff you have to do with these things. So thank you everyone.
I think this is a really good idea, and I think more people should post or talk about their process, but not just as a writer or just as an artist, but as a collaborative team. I think that is
I've been
more
doing a lot
revealing.
of these videos where I'm like working, like people can see how I work and all that, but it's just like me drawing, and it's sometimes it's just like not very kind of like, it doesn't reflect the whole process of the creation of a comic book kind of thing. So that's why I wanted to try this out with you and talk a little bit about how things happen and all that. So yeah.
Cool.
Anyways, thank you, people.
Thank you,
Enjoy,
guys.
and until next month. Bye.